The practical electric light was introduced in 1879 by Thomas Edison. It had been discovered that Edison was not the one who had created the incandescent light, but modified it to become more cheap and so that the filament would last longer than just a few minutes, but possibly all the time.
There's where the birds warble sweet.
The typewriter was first recognized by the public from C. Latham Scholes, a printer from Wisconsin in 1868. The invention was then sold to the company known as Remington & Son. They then sold the first typewriter in 1874. In 1876, Alexander Graham Bell had tested his new invention, the telephone, with his partner Watson. Just a year later, he presented the same demonstration in Boston. By 1886, more than 250,000 telephones were in use, mainly with businesses, creating more jobs for women.
Carry me back to old Virginia. There's where
Railroads played a large part in our history. They created a quicker way to travel as well as promoting sales for businesses. An example of this would be the meat packing business. Trains created the meat to be sent farther distances and still be fresh because certain train carts were refrigerated. The first transcontinental railroad played the biggest part in our history for our nation. It was built by the Union Pacific Company and the Central Pacific Company. They met in Promontory Point, Utah, where they drove a golden spike into the ground. From here on, railroads changed our nation.
carry me back to old Virginia.
In the late 1800s, the big business boom began. Many people saw the rise in big businesses, especially with factory work. Large companies could manufacture enough products to meet the demands of a national market. A modern example of this would be Sam's Club. They sell bulk for cheaper prices. Many smaller companies buy from similar places because it is easier to come in contact with. Big businesses were known for their efficiency and organization, as well as expanding companies using different methods known as a horizontal integration and vertical integration. Horizontal integration is the method of different firms engaging in similar businesses to expand. Vertical integration is the method of businesses engaging in different but related businesses.
To old Virginia, there's where the cotton and the corn and taters grow. There's where the birds warble sweet in the springtime. There's where this old heart of mine am.
George M. Pullman was born on March 3rd in 1831. He was born in New York and was known as a very well-respected industrialist. This was until he laid off 2/3 of his workers because he was not receiving enough profit from his railroad cars. The workers decided to protest and went on strike. Soon enough, the strike collapsed and there were few more disturbances. Pullman died October 19th in 1897 and is still remembered to this day. John D. Rockefeller was born on July 8th in 1839. He was very famous for his Standard Oil Company that he had founded in 1870. From 1870 to 1879, he gained control over 90% of the nation's refining businesses. Because of Rockefeller's methods of growing his industry, he was one of the most hated men in America. Andrew Carnegie, born on November 25, 1835, was another one of the richest men in his era. He did not do business the same as Rockefeller. Carnegie believed vertical integration was the best way to do things. Carnegie was wealthy from his steel corporations. A labor union is defined as an organization of workers formed for the purpose of advancing its members' interests in respect to wages, benefits, and working conditions. Many unions were faced unfairly with their employers. Employers would require their employees to take oaths promising not to join a labor union. If employers found out they were part of one, they were usually fired and replaced. Labor unions had many difficulties getting their point across to the public, but in 1873 most of the labor unions had vanished and the economy fell. In the early 1800s, many immigrants from Northern and Western Europe had moved to the United States. In 1885, large numbers of immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe started to rush in. because of the overpopulation and the unemployment. Some immigrants also came because of religious discrimination. In the 1900s, many immigrants experienced anti-immigration groups that had started. Much resentment came in this act. The development of cities started when frontier towns' populations started to grow. Chicago became a metropolis holding almost 2 million people, while New York City became the second largest in the world. Most of these cities became industrialized with factories, steamships, coal mines, and railroads. The city life was seen as very glamorous and beautiful, yet it had its flaws. The water was impure, and there was also high demand for it, even though it was polluted. There was a shortage in firefighters and policemen, so the crime rate rose rapidly. While the crime rate rose, so did the buildings as well as almost everything else in the cities, some good and some bad. Everything started to revolutionize into what it is today.